So you want to be a happy camper? Well, listen up. Coming up next, we'll share some of the unspoken rules at RV campgrounds. That's ahead on Unhitched with the Concrete Camper and Glamper.
All right, welcome back to another episode of Unhitched with the Concrete Camper, Reggie.
And I'm the Concrete Glamper, Mika.
All right, so on today's episode, we're going to discuss something I think that's a little interesting.
I would say so. I think it was prompted by some of our recent travel where we encountered a few of these conversational starters.
Yeah, and I think, when we look over the past almost 2 years, has it been 2 years?
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, 2 years.
As they say, time flies by when you're having fun.
And facing a lot of challenges. But hey, so we decided to kind of look back at our trips and some of the things that have come up over our trips. So we want to kind of talk a little bit more about the unwritten rules of RVing and camping.
The things that people don't tend to speak about in the beginning, but through time you realize, hey, I might be running afoul of a couple of these unspoken rules.
Yeah, and admittedly, I'm sure I've broken one or two of these rules, so to speak, in air quotes, but I think there's no rule book necessarily to how to behave, what to do when you are RVing at a campground. So we thought we'd take on this topic a little bit, but definitely if you have your own rules or you have your own thoughts about rules, please share them in the comments. And we're talking about the unspoken rules primarily here today.
Oh, yeah. Would love to hear. I'm so intrigued to see how many of you are in line and then some that, hey, maybe even we don't know about. So please definitely share in the comments. I look forward to hearing from you.
Yeah. So what's the first one up here?
I would say the first one is when you're pulling into an RV campsite, try to avoid being in the roadway. And it seems very simple on its surface, but I think where it gets tricky, not necessarily when you're pulling into the campground, whether you have a back in or a pull through, I think is once you're set up and you're there. And, for those of you who've been out there, you've seen the congestion that often takes place. Sometimes these streets are narrow, and then sometimes people are just inconsiderate. Their tow vehicles are there in the roadway, or they're hanging out of their campsites.
Yeah, we just went through that on this last trip when we went up to Wisconsin. We were in Indiana, and coming back home, we stopped over again on our second leg of our return trip. And it turns out the site that we got was a little shorter than the one we had previously. So once I pulled in, I ended up, like, the front of my truck was sticking out into the road. And, the plan was not to unhook because we were trying to get there, get in, and then wake up early in the morning and just go without unhitching.
And a piece of me was like, it's okay. It's just sticking out a little bit. It will be okay. We are only here for the night. But then,
But then you had other RVers that were coming in either earlier that morning or that night. So just being, I guess, considerate. So I was like, it's going to be okay. But Mika was pretty adamant about, hey, that's not cool. So we need to go ahead and unhook. So I ended up unhooking and then pulling onto the side of the gravel that was on the right side of the concrete pad and just parked my truck there for the overnight, which was kind of a good experience to do that because it was easy to walk out the front door and get to my bed in my truck and walk right back in. So it was new.
Right. The load in and load out was really, really quick. And, you didn't have to take as many steps. And, it had its pluses and minuses. You still felt like, this is not right in some capacity. But, walking out and bam, your door and the bed of the truck is right there was interesting. But, hey, it was how the campsite was set up. And so we just rolled with it.
Yeah. So just being considerate of the roadways, I think is one of the things that maybe it's not written, and definitely didn't see it in the rule books of the campground. But just being considerate, right? We're a great community, great people, so just being considerate of each other.
And then I would say another one that it happens in subconsciously, you don't think about it, but it's trying to avoid talking to folks when they're pulling in and setting up, and when they are trying to get out of there on the breakdown. Again, we encounter this, and you actually encounter this one more times than not, and then you're in this like precarious position of like, I don't want to be rude, I really do want to talk to you, but can you just give me like 15 minutes?
Yeah, because like we've talked about, and a lot of you all have like your checklist, right? And you when you get there, you're trying to typically, backing in, and we know that the community is great and people want to help. But I think also just being respectful of someone's process. You don't know how they communicate. You don't know, how their process works. So I would just say encourage everybody, let people get in, let them get set up, unhitched and whatever they need to do. And then when they're sitting out, hanging out, then absolutely say hi. But I just think it's more of a distraction, being in taking away from a person's concentration on doing the right thing and getting set up.
It's a safety thing.
It is. It's a safety thing, as well as just, you need to be conscious because you're dealing with a lot of machinery here, right? And things can happen. So you want to just allow them to concentrate, get set up, even in the fact, okay, they backed in and now they're just, chalking and unhitching and things like that. There's still a mental checklist, if not a written checklist, that they need to go through to make sure that they're safe, they're there, everything's solid, and then you can have the conversation. So not that for us, we're not antisocial, but
just
there
give me
is
15 minutes.
Yeah, like, especially backing in, because Mika and I, we have our own system. Appreciate people coming up and saying, hey, you need to do this, and it has its challenges already. At the end of the day, I need to be focused in getting in, and we appreciate the help, but I think just kind of pause yourself before running up and say, hey, let me guide you in. I have a partner with me that knows how to communicate with me effectively to get us in. So again, if someone's been struggling for 15 minutes,
then that's different.
Then okay. And I think the approach is, hey, do you need any assistance? But I think just the natural goodness of our community.
Yes.
Wants to, hey, let me guide you in. I would say ask first. Do you need my assistance? Or even asking your spotter, hey, does he or she need some help getting in? Are you guys good? And if they say yes, then walk away.
And enjoy the show. Because sometimes it's a show.
Yeah. Yes. It can be a special show.
A world premiere of comedy.
So, but anyway, I think that's, definitely a rule, an unwritten rule, but should be acknowledged and known by all RVers.
And then I would say another one sort of in this setup, moving through the campground, is being mindful of the speed limit. It seems like a given, of course, but I think in certain campgrounds and resorts, it's a bigger deal than others. I think the ones that tend to be nicer and newer, the roads are wider, you're on pavement, it's smooth sailing, and, 15 miles an hour just sometimes seems incredibly slow, but it's necessary because,
right.
All the factors, the congestion, folks are walking, the golf carts, and then especially the kids that are like running around on their bikes and everywhere. So just being mindful of the speed limit, I think is just incredibly important. And it's one of those rules that is frowned upon when you're speeding through. And sometimes it's unintentional. You're
right.
Like you said, you're in your head, you're trying to get somewhere.
You're excited.
You
arrived.
Yes.
You done did 12 hours. You finally made it. It's like, hit the gas and let me get to my site.
Yeah.
But
And I think along those lines too, I would say the next one would be kids, having kids unsupervised, because we have seen a number of close calls related to people speeding through. It's like there's a number of factors, and it's been so many close calls that it's like, whew.
Yeah, and I mean, I would think that most RVers do have some type of truck, or SUV, and that's usually it's raised off the ground. You know what I mean? So you can't see everything that's below you, so to speak, and that would be children and even adult children, so to speak. They're there having a good time, and most of the parks are like, I think Mika and I were talking, she's like, it's nothing but a large playground to them, no fault of their own.
I get it.
But we as RVers need to be conscious of that, safe and aware of that, that's happening. We don't have kids, but a lot of people do have children, and even if you're at an adults only RV resort, you're like, I don't have to worry about that. You got to worry about the big kids, the above 21 and older kids, because we don't pay attention a lot when we're out having a good time, and you need to look out for each other. So,
and our recent park that we stayed at in Wisconsin, I think fits perfectly in both of these categories of speed limit and unsupervised kids, because we encountered that. And it was so unnerving, and to the point where, it was just like, it was so crowded and people were everywhere. And even when you were just doing something as simple as backing out, the way that our truck was positioned behind our RV, rare do we have spotters, but just because of this dynamic, we were also slightly on an incline. Depending on who was driving, one of us got out and just stood in the street.
Yeah, just to make sure. Because, it was 4th of July. And, I mean, kids were on their bikes. They were just, wilding out. And, I mean, that's fine. But, maybe parental control a little bit more. And then, for us on the receiving end, just making sure that we're aware of our surroundings and making sure that the little campers are good to go. So...
absolutely.
Yeah. So,
and then I would say the next one that you may not think about, and you see oftentimes, in when you do check in of like dogs on leashes, because pretty much most folks ask you in the head, hey, do you have pets? And everyone thinks their dog is the most behaved dog in the world. And I get it. We have dogs. They don't come out and RV with us just because there's so many factors in that right now. But we have seen, we were RVing last summer, and this young lady had a dog that I think she thought she had more control over than she did. Clearly she didn't. And a little kid came by on a scooter, and this dog chased behind him. And this kid was like screaming bloody murder. And you just saw everybody kind of like jump up, because none of us knew like what were we seeing. And that's terrifying.
Yeah. I mean, and you got to think about it from a pet's perspective. It's a new environment. Mm-hmm. I don't care if they've been there or not, but it's a different environment from when they just came from. So you never know. They're excited. They're excitables. Ours are. And that's part of the reason why we don't take them right now. But we'll work on that. But at this point, they're just not ready to consume that much, excitement and sensory overload. So Absolutely. We're aware of that. So therefore, we keep them at home.
And can I just make one additional PSA to my lovely dog owners? I understand in the morning when you're walking and you want to stay close just to have them do their morning business, but be mindful of having them walk into someone else's campsite, or at the very front. A lot of folks have public places, spaces, they have dog parks. Like, just be a little mindful, because, sometimes there's a stench that comes on with little Fluffy, and, again, it's unintentional. You don't want to sound like that, like prudish person, but I think just being a little bit mindful of that when you're walking your dogs and we're sitting out, whether it's morning or day, enjoying ourselves, and your dog is coming and leaving us a present. Even though you're picking it up, it's still kind of a little bit rude and offensive. Just my little rant.
Yeah, no, a fair rant, I think. So, and along with that, another unspoken rule, which I almost think I think some campsites do put it in there, but walking through someone's site, I just think that is that's like a golden rule, you know. I mean, you're sitting out, you're having a good time, and then someone just comes, traipsing through your area, and maybe says hi and keeps walking through because they didn't want to go around. For the time that I'll speak for myself, for the time that we're there, that's our property, so to speak. And we came there to enjoy that site. And unwelcomed individuals just cutting through because they don't feel like going around, it's rude.
Yeah. And I would take another spin on that it also is just from a security, an alarming standpoint that, hey, you're out, and then all of a sudden, you should always have situational awareness, of course, but, someone just kind of like darting through or walking through, and it's just been some precarious situations that we've been in.
Yeah,
and
especially at night.
Yeah.
Especially at night, when you're sitting out and it's
like
it's
someone
unnerving.
coming through. Yeah. But there have been some incidents where we've seen some folks kind of like lose their cool over it. But like, we're not there. We're not going to say anything. But, just again, along the lines of helping you, especially if you're new to the RVing space, that yes, you're all tucked in there. You're really close. It seems really simple of like, hey, let me just go through here. Now, if you're RVing with someone, you have camping buddies, then half these rules don't apply because it's more of a communal thing. And, if you're at a, what do you call it? A meetup, and you're knowing a lot of people around you, then a lot of this, because now it's more of a communal vibe, then, it's just, you got to read the room.
It's almost like at your house. I would assume most of you wouldn't want someone just walking through your backyard, right?
Get off my lawn.
Or you wouldn't want someone cutting through your front yard, right? So it's the same respect. You've got your house on wheels, and right now you're at a property spot. So again, not to get all preachy about it, but for me, that's a no-go. That's a no-starter.
Would this be in the category of a pet peeve for you?
Yeah, it would be. It would be.
How many of you are in line with Reggie? Like, I get it. I'm not. It's not as high on my list of things. So let me know. Let me know if you're in the Reggie camp of pet peeves. Is this one high on your list, or where some of the other ones may rank? And then moving on, another one is loud music. This is one that, given the situation, it's cool. It's, it doesn't bother me as much, but it definitely, you tend to hear this one a lot of loud music. And,
well, they got quiet hours.
Yeah,
right?
They have quiet hours. And I think it's one of those things where, maybe depending on the speakers, your external speakers, the outside speakers on your rig, the makeup of like if there's trees, I think this is one that unintentionally people's music travels louder than you think, especially the bass or whatever you're playing. That it may not just be as simple as, hey, I've turned this up on 10 and I'm just, enjoying my music or whatever the du jour is of that moment. I do think sometimes it's music just travels further than you think about. And so this is one that I'm like super sensitive to, that I'm always like, hey, cut the music down, because I just don't want someone saying to me, am I the fun police? I mean that, I was a little suspicious over there.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that, the quiet hours are written. So,
but this is even outside of the quiet hours sometimes too.
That's what I'm talking about.
Okay.
If it's, hey, I'm good to go from 10 to 10, then I'm good to go.
So, Mr. Get off your lawn. So the takeaway from here is, don't walk through Reggie's lawn, but hey, you can come and we can kind of vibe out all day long until quiet hours.
Everybody's there for a good time, and part of that good time, is some music, and you're equipped with outside speakers for a reason. If you're entertaining, have at it. I think, but I mean, but within reason. Don't be
Yeah.
obnoxious. But I mean, you should be able to have a good time and enjoy yourself. Or if you're watching a sports game, especially SEC football kicking off soon in September, baby. Here we go. But when you're outside,
Go Dogs.
watching, when you're watching games, things can get a little hot, and that's all. I think that's okay, but you do have to be respectful of the of the written rules. Just saying, I might be curtailing this to fit my own needs, but so what? That's how I feel.
Okay. Taking notes. Taking notes.
It's all good. All good.
And then, so to help you have a good time, then, sir, how do you feel about outside lights? Or what have your experiences been in the outside light category?
Okay, so that's kind of your read the room quote. Like, if you some campgrounds don't allow you to have lights on. I think they actually
night.
at night, right? And so, but I mean, I would be mindful of it. I try to be mindful of it, for the fact that if my front light that we have illuminates into the back of someone's rig, that's not cool. I'm not going to put it on. Or even our porch light, it is yellow, but when you think about all the lighting and things like that, you got to be conscious of your neighbors. You are in close quarters, and if your light is shining on their rig, or you see a reflection on their rig, of your light off their rig, I suggest just turn it off.
Yeah. And then depending on where you are camping, depending on the season, there's an impact to some wildlife, whether attracting or impacting what they're doing. So it's just one of those that it may seem silly or not a big deal, but it's so nuanced that I just think it's just one to just be mindful of. But we all love lights. I mean, that quintessential picture that you have when you're RVing and having your awning out and having lights around or light string around. I mean, I think they definitely just add to the overall vibe. And so I think the more you can be mindful of that, the better.
Okay, Mr. Core. All right. Yeah. I mean, it's all good. I guess the point of this is just being mindful of other people and respectful of your neighbors. And everybody can have a good time. Everybody can get along. And, sometimes you just don't know.
Yeah. And I would say, sort of wrapping this up, knocking on the door of someone else's RV, primarily if it's someone that you don't know.
Right.
Just being mindful of that. And I don't know what brings me back to this. This was like one of our very first experiences. And we were in South Carolina and someone came and knocked on the door. And we were like, why is someone knocking on our door? And, we went to the door and the guy, he backed up. He did all the things that, you would recommend. And he was like, hey, buddy, your freshwater tank's overflowing.
Yeah. So I mean, but he did it like Mika alluded to. In my eyes, he did the right thing.
Yeah.
He walked up, knocked a couple times, then stepped back. In full view, so I could at least see who was at my door. He wasn't just standing there at my door where I couldn't see, or I'm just looking dead into his neck or his chest. I could see. Okay, I don't know this guy, but hey, can I help you? What's going on? Because I mean, when you think about it, your whole RV is like your whole living quarters.
It's exposed when you open that front door, depending on your layout. Sometimes you're like sitting there eating your potato chips and some comfy something, and it's like, no,
because you open our front door, you're gonna hit me right in the couch. I'm sitting right there, so it's just kind of like, okay, how you doing? But just I think in those situations, totally thank the man for letting me know, appreciate it. And I just think there's kind of ways to doing things personally, but typically just don't roll up on somebody and start knocking on their door.
Which is so fascinating to me, because in the RV world, you think twice about knocking on someone's door to whatever it is. And when you're at home or in an environment outside of the RV world, I don't think you think as much about, it could be me, but you just don't. Like, should I wait out here till someone comes outside? Or do I go up and knock, for whatever the reason may be? I just think that's kind of like a fascinating nuanced thing that in the RV world, people think twice about knocking on a door, where when you're at home, whether it's an apartment, condo, or house, you may not think about that as much.
True. Well, hopefully the good thing is you don't have solicitors in RV parks. I'm just saying, no salespeople, please. But no, that's kind of a good point when you think about it. And can't remember where I even picked that up from.
Yeah, it was one of those. We've learned it along the way. We've had conversations about it, and we've
Right.
never, like I said, we've never run into any sort of issues with it. It was just early on because going into it, we read that it was such a faux pas.
Yeah.
And then when the gentleman did to us the first time, and we were like, "Why is someone knocking on my door?" And it's like, "Hey, buddy, I'm trying to help you out here." And
Right.
it's like, "Thank you, thank you, thank you." So
Yeah.
anywho. And then lastly, I would say when you're out thinking about some of these unwritten rules is maybe consider bringing along you a collapsible trash can. It's one of those things that it may seem not necessary, especially when you're getting started, but I'll consider myself in that camp. Like when you were initially buying supplies and I'm like, why do we need a trash can? Like that's a bit much. But it's a necessity in RVing, I think.
Well, yeah, when you're there for a couple days and say you're in a scenario where they don't pick up your trash and you've got to tote that trash to you, or they are late picking up your trash and it, trash piles up. Come on, y'all.
Quickly.
In having that inside, just isn't a good look nor a good smell. So at the end of the day, I typically try and get everything out and put it outside in a collapsible trash can that zips up. You see them, they're not expensive, and the fact that you're able to kind of keep your area clean, or if you have stuff that you've been doing outside, you guys have been eating outside, it's just a place to dispose of it inside of a hefty bag or whatever, and just kind of keep it closed. Mm-hmm. It's not an eyesore, so to speak, instead of having, just a trash bag, black trash bags or whatever, just hanging out. Mm-hmm. So, and it kind of goes along with just an idea of keeping a kind of neat and tidy camping area. It's just another tool in your arsenal to just kind of keep things together. And mostly people, we all agree that you should try and keep a tidy site. It's just respecting each other, again, like we talked about earlier.
Agree. So hope that some of you found this helpful, and would love to hear from all of you, maybe some of your pet peeves or some of those unspoken rules that are on your list that you're mindful of that will be helpful for someone else. Definitely leave a comment below. And before we get out of here, Reggie, what is this week's word on the concrete curb?
All right. So, word on a concrete curb. I was actually checking out some articles, and we're looking at kind of the overall RV industry. Where do we sit today? And one of the articles I came across here was, it was entitled Opinion, Another Cycle in the RV Industry. So, we all just went through this whole situation with COVID, and we're COVID purchasers. That's how we got into RVing. So there was a mad dash to go out and grab RVs because you couldn't go anywhere else. Now that the pandemic has kind of settled down, or post-pandemic as we'll call it, there has kind of been a look like, are we in a downturn of RV purchasing? Which is interesting because you have to look at a bunch of the different factors, right now, interest rates, and a lot of people like we did upgraded. There's a lot of people looking like, okay, I got my RV, I'm ready for the next one. And right now they're finding that supply is coming in, but the overall cost to buy a new RV and the interest rates that you're looking at, a lot of people are just saying, I'm good. I'm going to have to make it through what I have. And the industry has been talking about, is there going to be kind of a surplus? But I did read an opposing article around from Camping World, the CEO of Camping World, which he is in position to say that he feels like 2024 is going to be a winter year for the industry.
Interesting.
Yep. In fact, he's predicting and kind of doubling down a little bit on the amount of RVs that he is actually going to purchase and have on site for Camping World. So I thought that was kind of interesting. It's kind of the yin and yang. But from our own perspective right now, honestly, if we really wanted to go out and purchase a new RV we wouldn't do it.
No, I mean, it's always fascinating to go into window shop with RVing and with RVs. And, it doesn't take quick for you to notice that lots are full. It seems like a lot of options are coming in. It's that time of year when these 2024s are coming across, various lots. But
yeah, which I do want to get out and take a look at those.
I really do as well. And we make sure we'll share it with you all.
Yep.
Is that bug of, hey, I'm ready to upgrade, I'm ready to find something new is completely gone. Like Trina is magnificent. She always was my girl and we was going to ride out. But even now with this current climate, I am not tempted or intrigued at all.
And real life, I mean, your dad is going through that now. He's been entertaining.
He's been
Mr. Bobby. He's been out there entertaining. But when you look at the interest rates and just trying to find a good deal overall, there's a challenge there. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how 2024 rolls out. But I thought that was kind of interesting perspective, from Camping World and then just the RV industry. One of their insiders just kind of giving a overview of what the expectation could be for the industry and buying. So we'll see.
Yeah, we'll keep a lookout on that. So with that, we will wrap things up and just encourage you that if you like what you heard here, we encourage you to subscribe to our podcast. It's available, of course, here in the traditional form, but you can also listen to it on YouTube Music. And up next, we'll continue to chase the sun, sand, and sea
in our RV.
Let me do that one more time. All right. So, I think it's time for us to get out of here. It's a great time for us to encourage you all that if you liked what you've heard here today, we encourage you to like and subscribe to our channel. You can also listen to this on YouTube Music. And until next time, we'll continue to chase the sun, sand, and sea
in our RV.